special moment. And there are so many differences that people think that exist between NUMSA and solidarity. But the more we interact, the more we see we've got so much in common. And, you know, I have seen with the interactions with NUMSA, we can have mature discussions, mature debates on the differences we have, and the end result is we realize we're actually just South African citizens looking for the best for our members, and we actually desire the same outcome. I have seen last year also when the Zimbabwe army just arrived, and the NUMSA initiative took me to Soweto as a representative of solidarity to go and meet with the Soweto residents regarding the electricity crisis. And when I was sitting there listening to the plight of people from Soweto, I realized we are just simply fellow South Africans with the same frustrations, the same issues. But we also had lighter moments. Years ago, there was a meeting between Solidarity and NUMSA's leadership. And Urban Jim at one stage said to us in the meeting, look, we don't like what you're doing regarding affirmative action in your stance, but to a certain degree, I can live with it. But the one thing I don't understand is where there's a strike. On the one side of the gate, NUMSA will toy and picket. On the other side of the gate, Solidarity said they are on strike, but they're having a ride. They said, how can that be a strike? And then Philip Weiss, who was the GS at the time, he then responded to Urban, and he said, listen, it's simple. If there's a dispute and it reaches a deadlock, and then we have to go on strike, we don't go on a hunger strike. That's why we have a strike. So, that's food for thought. Well, this is obviously a collective bargaining conference. Soon you will realize if you read in the media and the press, they will refer to the strike season. We're not calling this a strike conference, we're calling it a collective bargaining conference, because that is our first attempt, obviously to reach a settlement. But obviously there are also times when you cannot predict what you promised your members at the negotiation table, then you have to go collect it in the streets. But if you look at this year's negotiation, there's only one major negotiation where Solidarity and NUMSA will join hands, and that's at Eskom. In the motor industry this year, there are more negotiations where NUMSA is overall the majority union, dominating that whole industry where we will just be a support, but not at the table. But the Eskom negotiation is very important. Eskom is the one institution in this country holding the country to ransom. They've got the biggest negative influence on the economy, and that's why it's important when we get to that negotiation that we also remind Eskom the influence they're having on ordinary workers, not only Eskom employees. The first thing, what Eskom denied verbally last week, that there are any wrongdoing with regards to the tenders, the new coal supply tenders offered to Gideon Resources, politically connected organization. We all know that, but we are busy with research to prove them wrong. We are very close to making our findings public, where we can prove there was a lot of wrongdoing, a lot of money that flowed from Eskom to that specific institution before they even delivered their first batch of coal. Another concern we have in that regard is that the supply chain of coal in this country is now under severe pressure. There is a major risk to offer that kind of important tender to people that must keep their eyes on, because coal is obviously very important. So that's our one concern. The second concern is every increase that Eskom or every tariff hike that they're asking for the workers are paying for it. Because what happens, you'll find if we get to the wage negotiation table, the employers will use the ESCOM tariffs as reason for a very low increase. There's an additional increase that ESCOM was awarded, that nearly 1.5% will come off the salaries of the workers, because employers will say, we haven't budgeted for it, as a result, we will have to factor it into the wage increases. So it's not consumers, it's not employers, it's workers who are eventually paying the price for those tariff hikes. Now, if we look at the big negotiations, other than that, AMPU and NUMSA will be the main players this year. And the one thing, if I can be so arrogant to say, the one thing that Solidarity, AMPU and NUMSA have in common is that we must do something right, because we are the only three unions who are really growing in this country. But the negotiation of AMPU 2 years ago, that 5-month strike is a very important lesson that employers must learn out of that AMPU strike. What happened 1 month into the strike? The CCMA have put an offer on the table that the employers outrightly rejected. 4 months later into the strike, the same agreement was signed. So that's the one lesson that employers must learn, that first of all, if there's an opportunity to pay a higher wage, not the union members, your employees, I don't understand why employers always refer to your members at the negotiation table. It's their employees that they must actually refer to. The second thing is, most employers hold their offer back until there's a dispute, until there's a strike. So this year we say to the employers, be bold, put your offer on the table at the negotiation phase, that we can deal with that reality. And obviously we will deal with the maturity. There are obviously employers that will argue, and I understand you listened to a presentation yesterday, that the outlook is bleak, etc., etc. But there's a direct link between higher productivity that employers want and higher wages. And that's not what I'm saying as unionist alone. There was one of the best labor economists in this country that I know, the late Dr. Franz Barker. He was the chief negotiator of the Chamber of Mines at the time when he wrote the book, The South African Labor Market. And he spent a whole chapter just on the link between a higher wage and higher productivity. So, and that is something that employers furthermore have to understand. Then, NUMSA are obviously voting into this year's negotiations. You will find from here on, employers will play the oldest trick in the book. They will start with issue section 189 notices. In certain workplaces we have to negotiate. That's an old tactic. But retrenchment is a sickening process. If you look at the whole concept around retrenchment, and first of all, the uncertainty we have on workers, if it's just using a strategy, but the impact it's having on South African citizens after retrenchment. And I had a very wise colleague, our previous deputy GS, Peter Coy, and he used this analogy of retrenchments to describe it as a person who wants to lose weight. If you want to lose weight, what do you want? You want to weigh less. So he says, very simple. You just go to the hospital, ask them to cut off your legs, and the next day you will weigh less. And it's not going to help you, and it's got long-term consequences, and that's exactly how retrenchment works. It's got long-term consequences. It weakens a company because they lose skills, and obviously it's got a major impact on employees. Let's take, for example, what happened at Airbus Hydron Steel. Over the last year,
2,440 workers lost their jobs through retrenchments. But the impact was not only on 2,440 employees. In the metal engineering industry and steel industry, since it's so labor intensive, it creates 4 jobs for every 1 permanent position. The end result was that the impact was 13,000 employees in that region in Emalafeni lost their jobs because they worked for employers dependent on high-powered steel. And that is the multiplying effect of retrenchments. And that is why it's so important that we put all effort into finding ways not to let our members to be retrenched. Now, just to end off, this year's negotiations for NUMSA is very important. We're going to negotiate in big industries, big companies. Well, first of all, to negotiate in the tire industry, I hope we have a good year. Then, secondly, what is very important for NUMSA is you are the biggest trade union in the country. As the biggest trade union in the country, you have to claim your space through the collective bargaining process. It gives you the platform to prove in the public domain what your strength is, why you are the biggest trade union in this country, in Africa as well, obviously. And then secondly, NUMSA is not a sweetheart trade union, but it's a very professional, and effective union. So you can also use this to your advantage. But there's also a new federation that will see the light within the next few months, maybe next few years. And although there are a lot of campaigns where civil society gets involved in, there's nothing as good as a collective bargaining campaign to fast track the development of a new organization like the Labour Federation. So that is also something that you can use to your advantage. Then, lastly, if you end up in a strike situation, there are 2 things. Solidarity, make a promise to you. The first thing is we will stick to the union protocol. What is the union protocol during a strike? That other union members don't do the work of striking employees to make your strike more effective and hopefully a shorter strike. And then lastly, our promise is, if you tell us we're going to strike, we will bring our right to make sure it's not a hard strike. Thank you very much.